The three main buckets that I see people generally falling into when they're afraid to get something started are either I don't have the time, I don't have the knowledge, or I don't have the resources. But what it often means is that there are trades that we haven't finalized internally. One of the things that's really tricky about being both an entrepreneur and a public speaker is getting started. Today, I want to talk about some of the techniques and pieces that can help you to consistently deliver when the time comes. My name's Alton Wheelhouse. I'm the owner of Shatter 55 Consulting, and I love helping small business owners and entrepreneurs build businesses that light them up, that are profitable, sustainable, and most importantly, purposeful. What have been some of the blocks that you've run into in the past that have prevented you from getting started? The three main buckets that I see people generally falling into when they're afraid to get something started are either I don't have the time, I don't have the knowledge, or I don't have the resources. But what it often means is that there are trades that we haven't finalized internally. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Anytime that we are going to be taking something out of our life, we still have the same vessel that needs to be filled. This is one of the reasons why when people are trying to break old habits, if they just try to quit cold turkey and not put anything into its place, they're going to run into problems. There's a really simple exercise that you can do right now. Take your hands, put them together like this. In just a moment, what you're going to do is you're going to unclasp your hands and put them back together, but with the other thumb on top. Ready? Go. Right now, if you're like me, you're probably feeling just a little bit of discomfort. It's not that there's anything wrong per se, but it's just not the way that you're used to doing things. Go ahead and switch back. Oh, okay. That feels a lot better, right? It's because our brain does the best that it can to screen out any extra data that it doesn't need to be able to make a decision. What it wants to do is find the most comfortable way to be consistent, and therefore it prioritizes that consistency above all else. This means that even if we want something and we're starting to make space for it, the initial inertia is often difficult to overcome. When you recognize that something is uncomfortable, go back and say, okay, why? Let's get curious about that feeling. Why does this thing feel so weird, so unusual, so hard? And is that thing that is different, in fact, the thing that is going to enable me to grow? When I'm looking at time within my schedule, something that's in my way that's creating that emotional slowing down, that friction, I'm saying, okay, how do I make all of this happen? I do my best to only put things onto my calendar that are absolutely firm. And I purposefully plan extra time and padding around them. So I'm making sure that I've made the space to eliminate any other distractions or excuses before I get there. Especially for my friends with ADHD, I'm one of them. Oftentimes that time pressure can also be something that you use to your benefit. The Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro actually goes back to, it's an Italian word that's referring to a tomato, because back in the 70s and 80s, there were mechanical egg timers that would often come in the shape of tomatoes. And a gentleman in Italy decided that one of the best things that he could do is, instead of scheduling a full hour to get this thing done, he's going to do 15 minutes and then a 5-minute break. And then 15 minutes and a 5-minute break. I'm going to be able to get up, I'm going to stretch my legs, set up a timer to make sure that it's going to happen. This is actually one of the ones that I use. It both counts up and down. For those of us who it's easy to get started, but it's difficult to sustain through that time. One of the most insightful interviews that I've seen recently was between George R.R. Martin, the creator of Game of Thrones, and Stephen King, who is a horror author of 50 years at this point. Easily two of the most successful authors, at least monetarily speaking, in our day and age. Now, George R.R. Martin is famous for not getting his works out on time. And he asked Stephen King, what do you do? How do you produce all of this work so consistently? Stephen King's response was that every day, no matter what, he commits to 4 hours of work. His goal is that by the end of that period, he will have produced 6 finished pages. But if all he can do is get to time, that's what he does. Because it is the act of figuring it out that unlocks the next steps that gets you to your destination. And I guarantee you that not every word that Stephen King has written has been published, but those words that got him moving were the things that enabled him to reach you and millions of other people across this globe. All of this being said, when we're talking about time as a barrier to getting something done, usually it's either a problem with getting started or getting sustained. In both cases, blocking out the appropriate time to be able to remove the extra emotional barriers is going to be a great way to get through that. The second thing that is a common barrier for entry to people is, I don't have the ability. On the surface, makes a lot of sense, but one of the beautiful pieces to you being an entrepreneur is that you've already identified that your value comes from creating value. If it takes me 6 hours to get something done today, even if a year from now it only takes me 15 minutes, I'm still going to charge the same amount. And that is the way that emotionally I have to view my own tasks as well. It's not about how long it takes. It's about whether it gets done, even if it gets done imperfectly. As we're moving through this age of the internet and everybody has access to a cell phone and an internet connection, people are in fact starting to value authenticity more than they ever have. And so you can have that confidence that says that the quality of your work will continue to improve. The value of your work is innate, because the person who you are serving on the far side is the important part, not how perfect it looks or how perfect it is in the moment. Perfect example, look at my lighting right now. I'm seeing the little shadows and things that are imperfect, but I know that those are issues that I'm going to be able to resolve with experience. And I'm not going to allow that imperfection to get in the way of me getting started. The value that I am trying to give to other people is the part that is most important. Now, be careful to avoid the sin of comparison. Anytime that you're beginning to use the words I should or it should be, you are having to compare it against something that's in your mind. Understand that the only output to that can be shame. You're not exactly the same as that other person. You don't get to see the hours or years of work that go into somebody before they produce the thing that ends up in front of you. Physical, mental, or emotional struggles that the person you are comparing yourself to went through in order to produce the result that you're getting. There are days where the best thing that I can do for myself is get up, take a shower, have a meal, and go for a walk. And then there are other days where I can sit down for 10 hours and just produce insane content back to back. The path that you are on will be able to inspire people and help them in ways that only you can through this exact experience of just getting started and seeing what comes out the other side. So be brave and step into it. The final common trap that people fall into is the belief that they don't have the resources to do what they want to do. I don't know specifically what projects you're taking on, but this is where going and doing research on others in your industry who started and seeing how they got things going may in fact bring some additional insight to you. I will warn you, this is only a patch for the logical side of yourself. Your product is unique to you. So even if you're using somebody else's ideas as a template, your perfect version will only be found through the experience of seeing what works and what doesn't. Let me give an example from my own past. One of my very first businesses was writing and arranging music. I was in high school. I certainly didn't have thousands of dollars to be able to spend on budget, but what I did have was the ability to print out staff paper and write it out by hand. It was a miserable experience, and you better believe that the moment that I started getting paid for my work, the first thing that I put it into was software to do some of that heavy lifting for me. But those resources need not be a barrier to entry. It may be substantially easier if you have a beautiful 100-piece orchestra behind you playing the exact perfect music to punctuate your piece, or to access a library of hundreds of thousands of pieces of stock photo and video. But the reality is that every idea that has ever existed started from nothing. When I am considering the resources to produce the vision that's in my head, I have to start by asking the question, is the value that I am producing about the way that it looks or the way that it feels? My very first retail store, we started on a budget of $55,000. At that moment, it was basically everything that we had to be able to get that project going. In hindsight, as I look back, that number was exceptionally small, but we had no idea what was going to be required or what would need to happen in order for us to get where we needed to go. As people started to come in, the things that they remarked upon were not where our money went, but rather on the experiences that we were creating for them. We focused on making sure that our bathrooms were clean, that our space was well lit, that everybody was welcomed the moment that they walked in the door. Those things cost us very, very, very little. The way that I view when I feel that I don't have the resources that I need is to see it as a challenge to overcome. What is the most that I can do with the resources that I do have available? Knowing that whatever I am creating is intended for the recipient, and it will be exactly what they need. There may be people who don't connect with your message today, but those who need your message most will always be ready to receive it, regardless of what it looks like or how perfect or imperfect it is. You will find that you connect more deeply and importantly with purpose to the people who need it most. Stay focused, lean, and agile on the things that matter most to the person you're trying to help. And again, it's about the value that you create, not the value of your production. Whatever you do is good enough. If your goal is worthy, so are you. These 3 buckets are things that everybody falls into from time to time. The best thing that you can do for yourself today, regardless of which of those buckets it is to practice being yourself. I believe in you. And this moment is the only moment that matters. Whether your next step is starting the business or writing out a plan or just journaling to yourself, taking the time to be able to polish your internal skills, today is the day. Now is the time to get started. If this has been valuable to you today, please feel free to check me out. And if you have a business that you feel could use some help from the outside or an idea that you want a little bit of polish on, please reach out to me. Go to shatter55.com/profitwithpurpose to be able to book a consultation call with me. We'll spend an hour together understanding the thing that you're trying to build and helping unlock actionable steps that you can take on your own. I hope that this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to connecting with you more in the future.